Welcome to Beyond the Lab, a series by the Office of Career Development within the Biomedical Research, Education, and Training Department of the Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. My name is Kate Stewart, and I'm here today with Kathleen Goss. She graduated in 1997 in cell biology, and so we're so glad to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me, what did you do while you were here at Vanderbilt?
So I, as you said, I was in cell biology, the Department of Cell Biology, and I got my PhD with Lynn Matresian, who is no longer here. I know she ended up being the chair of cancer biology for quite some time. A fantastic mentor and scientist, and so we studied the role of matrix metalloproteases in colorectal cancer. Is what my thesis was about. But it was a great experience. I loved it here.
Good. So tell me how you got from Vanderbilt to where you are now.
Not a direct path, let me tell you. So after graduate school, I went to do a postdoc at the University of Cincinnati. I had really wanted to stay at that time. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and so it was sort of the next logical step to do an academic postdoc. And so I ended up going to work in a lab for someone who was studying colorectal cancer, and I thought I had a lot to offer to that project, and so it was a very productive postdoc. I really enjoyed it. I think I brought some of the skills that I had built here to that project. But I also was starting to think about what I wanted to do next. As I was finishing up my postdoc, I had heard about a faculty position that was open at the University of Cincinnati, so in a different department, but at the same institution. And on a whim, I applied for the job. And in fact, it was funny because I was 9 months pregnant with my son and walked my CV over to the head of the search committee. And I remember asking the folks in my lab, like, should I put on a lab coat to cover my big belly? And they're like, Kathy, nothing is going to cover that at this point. I think I was self-conscious about it, you know. But anyway, I ended up getting the job and started my lab there in Cincinnati. And then a few years later, my chairman got recruited to chair the surgery department at University of Chicago. And so he invited several of us to come with him. I think we ended up moving 5 labs there, so it was a big move, but it was a no-brainer for me going to a really great institution, but also to an amazing city, which I've really grown to love. So I've been at the University of Chicago for almost 8 years. But about 2 years ago, I decided to transition out of research, and I got recruited to our cancer center, and there I have a very diverse set of responsibilities, from communications to integrating our education activities to advocacy and outreach. So a lot of things that I care about. So it's been a great fit for me, but it's also using the science that I had spent a lot of time doing and using the experience that I had as a faculty member. So it was a bit of a windy path, but I ended up, through academic research and now doing something sort of non-traditional, but something that I'm really enjoying and feeling like I can make an impact in.
Good. Can you tell me a little bit about what you actually do during the day in your current role?
Sure. So I have several sort of major responsibilities. I guess I would say they're sort of buckets that I have to take care of. One is science communication. So anything that comes out of our cancer center that has to do with science, it's usually written by me. And then, so that's, and that includes social media and printed pieces and a blog and that kind of thing. And another bucket is our education activities and really trying to enhance what we are doing in terms of education from our Cancer Center. And the third bucket is outreach. So, and really enhancing the partnerships that we have with cancer organizations that we have a shared mission with. So American Cancer Society, Komen Foundation, that kind of thing. And then the fourth bucket is advocacy. And so it's really helping to coordinate and enhance our activities from an institutional standpoint around local, state, and federal issues having to do with cancer, including legislation and NIH funding. So on a given day, depending on sort of what is burning, I may spend a lot of time writing some content for posting on the blog or, posting on social media. I may spend quite a bit of time, like right now we are gearing up for our summer research program. We started a new program for high school students. And so we're getting ready for those kids to come on campus. And so there's a lot of those sort of coordination of activities and finding mentors and that kind of thing. On another day, I know like in the last couple of weeks, I've been in DC and in Springfield, our state capital, for advocacy events. And so I may be preparing for those or coming back and reporting on what we're doing or following up on some things. So it really depends. One thing I've had to learn is to multitask and keep everything sort of moving and all these buckets, those things moving forward. But it's been a lot of fun because no day is the same, which I really find exciting and gratifying, and I don't get bored.
Very nice. Okay, good. So you talked about some skills that you had to gain by being in this role. What are some of the skills that you were glad that you had in your PhD training that you could take to this job?
It's a great question. I feel like probably the key skill that I developed as a PhD student and then honed through my postdoc and as a lab director is communication. I think in the job that I have, the thing that is common in all those areas that I mentioned is it's important to be a good communicator and bringing people together. And I think that's something that I learned, obviously, as a PhD student initially, having to give talks when you really don't want to, or learning to write well. Yeah. Those are things that I really, I enjoyed. At least eventually, but I think, it really has paid off dividends to be able to, those are definitely transferable skills for my current position. I mentioned multitasking. I mean, I would say that I've had to hone that skill since taking this job on and becoming a bit more organized, but certainly working in a lab and obviously I got my feet wet in my PhD lab. You have to be a multitasker, and that has been hugely important to being successful at what I'm doing. And I guess the last thing I'd say is paying attention to detail. I think that's, again, a transferable skill that, conducting experiments, you obviously have to pay attention to detail. But in the position I'm in, I can't let things slide or miss things. It really comes back not to hurt me, but hurt the organization and everyone else that it impacts. And so I think that those are all pretty important transferable skills that I was able to bring to the table.
Okay, good, great. So I'm sure in your role you have to do a little bit of networking.
Yes.
What are some of your strategies? How do you network?
I'm not sure that I'm great at it. I think, again, that's something that you continue to hone. I guarantee that I was terrible at it when I first had to do it. I think I underestimated how important networking is, certainly as a student, probably as a postdoc. So I definitely appreciate it now. I think a lot of it is connecting people, just communicating, being yourself, following up. My mother always made me write thank you notes, Yes. I think that's something that, is sort of ingrained in me. If you meet someone, follow it up, you know, with an email so that they remember who you are. Those things are really, really critical. You want to not just meet people. Networking is not just meeting people.
Right.
It's actually having a relationship and making sure that that dialogue with them is ongoing. So I think it's key that you work at it. Social media has made it a little easier, like LinkedIn, for example, but it's not enough just to have connections and you're not, you know, to push the button and have a connection. You actually have to work at it and communicate, which I think is really important.
So I'm sure you have a little bit of a work-life balance. What does that look like for you?
Well, I'll tell you, it looks better now that I don't run my own lab. Things are definitely more balanced than they used to be. I think I really struggled with that as a PI of a lab. I have 2 children. I had them both when I was a postdoc. They are now 16 and 13, so I have teenagers. It's a whole different ballgame. But my work-life balance, you know, now is, you know, I obviously, like many people, I work regular hours, but instead of, you know, worrying about writing my grants when the kids went to bed, now I can be more present with them. I mean, I still do some work at home, but it's on my terms, and it's, you know, usually catching up on emails or writing something, not, you know, really having to focus on things like writing a grant or a paper. So it really is easier. And I will say too that, I mean, my husband is great. He contributes, you know, 50-50. We have a real partnership when it comes to our family life. But transitioning out of academic research has allowed me to take on more at home. So that means that he's freed up to do some things. And as an example, he just got a promotion for a job where he now travels a lot, which we could not have done, you know, a few years ago when my kids were smaller or when I was running a lab. So I think I work hard like any other working parent. I work hard to reach that balance. Half the time I feel like I do a pretty crappy job at everything, but for the most part, you know, you have to be satisfied in what you can do. You can only do so much. And I think what's critical is that you don't look back and say, you know, oh, I wish I would have done things differently, and especially when your kids are young. I'm a bit reflective now that I've got a kid that's looking at colleges, so I'm, you know, thinking about, well, how they're not going to be here forever.
Sure.
So, anyway.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. We're so glad that you came back to talk with us.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.